Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This video is coming from down along Kootenay Lake here, and this talk is to be shared amongst taxpayers. I'm a taxpayer. I've been in BC for a lot of years, and coming up to be 88 years old this year. Spent 35 years with the Highways Administration folks, and just a couple of things I want to say. It doesn't matter who does the work. It doesn't matter whether you have a blue jacket on with Highways Ministry operation or whether you have a Joe Buck's shovel operation. It doesn't matter. It's all done by the cost of operation. Now, if with the highways doing their own thing, they had their own staff, had their own training facility, and their own inspection. Now now we're at a little different juncture, and I'm not saying one is any better than the other, but you have to decide that yourself. When you take a look at the operation beforehand, and I'm just going to take a look at a piece of paper that kind of shows how to point out here for you. On the old system, we had the triangle. This is the top of the triangle here. We had the highways minister, we had the regional directors, district highways manager, director, and then the foreman, and then you and I. You and I are the taxpayer. The foreman was a worker. District highways manager was a worker, and the regional director was a worker, and then the minister. So when you had a complaint, it went up to the ministerial level. If you couldn't get any action, you'd go to the ministerial level, and then the minister would call up the regional director and say, what's going on, so and so, we got complaints with the roads, and he would go down to the district manager, who would go to the foreman, and then we'd deal at that level. So that would be the operation there, stopping at the ministerial level, going down to the regional director, district highways manager, foreman, you and I. Now if we go over to the other triangle now, we have ICBC, we have the Minister of Highways, District Highways Manager, and inspection staff, and then the contractor, and he has his own inspector, and then you and I. So then we get into the business about non-conformance. The contract is written up with standards, and everything is spelled out in standards. How to do this and how this to do that, and when the highways inspector goes up and finds something that doesn't meet the contract standard, he goes to the contractor, and his inspector looks at it and says, oh no, and then you get an argument between the inspectors. So all the work is done on paper. So a lot of time is spent saying, oh, it meets standard, no, it doesn't meet standard, and a lot of time is spent arguing about whether it's meeting the standard or not. Now, under the old system, we had minister, regional director, district highways manager, foreman, you and I. That's it. And all these people were paid by the government. Now, when we take a look at the inverted triangle now, it's profit-driven. Inverted triangle. We have less workers, and cost cutting becomes a game. Do it cheap, 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 cheap. Now, we cannot be some of the problem boils down to the fact that the doesn't matter what we do, there's a cost involved. So let's say that you have to fix a pothole in the road. Now, if the cost is $2,000 or $5,000, it doesn't matter. There's the actual cost. That means if we dig it out, jackhammer, or whether we use a ditching machine, dig it out, we're going to have replacement material, it's got to be compacted, and then paved over the top. And that actual cost does not change. And we have to meet that cost. Now the ministry always have done the whole thing before, so they've done the whole work. Now you're going through a contractor, and the low bid process, what happens, when you go into a bid process, you put it out on the market and people will take a look at it, and the bad thing about the bidding process is sometimes people bid who have no idea how much the cost is. So you cannot do work below cost, because the actual cost is always there and it never changes. In fact, it increases as the price of materials go up, the cost increases. So if you have somebody who's bidding on the job, who's done the work before, they will know what the cost is because they actually performed their work. They will know from the records what the cost was of doing this and doing that, and they have all the records. And with privatization, we had the first contractor in the Kootenai. It was a very good one. It was Bell Maintenance. In the first contract, they took over the contract. The same money that was used, that the ministry used to do the work. They used the same equipment, and they used the same manpower. And they did an excellent job, no complaints. They followed exactly the same work that what the ministry done. Same supervisors, and they did an excellent job. Very little complaints. And then they did the next contract they did. They used all the equipment that the ministry had, paid for all the repairs. And when the equipment was turned back, they didn't buy it. It was everything went back to low bid, and then a lot of the contractors sold the equipment. They didn't buy the equipment. They just let it go up for grabs, and they bought new stuff, which was a good move. But looking at the big picture, it doesn't matter who does the work, as long as the repairs are being done. So that means to say that behooves you and I, as taxpayers, to pay attention to what's being done. So the one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and I want you to think about this, is the fact that this time of the year now is when we should be doing some very important stuff. Now I'll show. Got a shovel full of sand here. Now what's happening in the bidding process now? The contractor is starting to use a liquid product, chemical product, to melt the ice on the road, and they're trying to replace sand. Now sand has been used for years and years, and it's grit. And when you put it on top of ice, if you put a little bit of salt with it, it does a hell of a job because it melts and goes into the surface. And the tires grip on this stuff, and it makes a good traction. And it's added traction. And that is a fact of life. If you think about your driveway, if you've got a slippery, slippery driveway, and you're having trouble getting your car up there, if you shovel the snow off, and you put some sand on there. In fact, if it's only a little bit of snow, you can put the sand right on top. And that adds traction. Your wheels will stop spinning. And the sand cannot be replaced with a chemical. Now what they're doing, you can actually help melt the snow down, but the one problem that we experience here, and we've seen it in the Kootenays over and over again, is the fact that you get a snowfall that's 2 or 3 inches of snow, and there's no sand on the road. So the road is really slippery, and we have vehicles, cars, and trucks off the road upside down, and people are getting hurt. Sand is not being used properly. Anytime you have salt on the road or salt and sand on the road. The salt melts the ice down, lets the snow down. The sand is there for a purpose. It adds extra traction. But sometimes the salespeople from the chemical companies come along and they talk to the contractor and say, oh, if you use this chemical product we got now, it melts the snow and we never have to have sand. And it's being oversold. And as a result of that now, major accidents and death is happening. And guess what? ICBC just pays the bill. So there's no incentive. If the contractor was being told by ICBC, okay, look, when you're maintaining the highway, if we have a bunch of accidents out there, and it's being reported on police reports that the road is covered with snow and it's glare ice, and there's no sand being used for traction restore, we can't blame that totally on the driver. Yes, the driver has a lot of control. They need to have traction tires. Now the new rules are 4 traction tires all the way around on your car. And you have to have change if it's really slippery. But in most cases it's a snowfall, and a couple of inches of snow turns into ice really quickly. And if you don't put sand out there, people are going to slide off the road. Now if you put a liquid chemical out on the road and it freezes, now you got glare ice. Nobody can drive on glare ice. It doesn't work that way. Glare ice is a slippery, dangerous condition. If you have chains on, you will probably navigate okay. But in most cases, the road's slippery. The sensible thing to do is to plow it and sand it. Now, if you put salt on or a chemical to melt the snow, you have to be really, really careful, because we know darn well at minus 32 or 0 Fahrenheit, we get freezing. Water will freeze. So if you put any chemical on the road and you melt snow and turn it into water, as soon as the water freezes, you got glare ice. So a lot of the problem is ICBC doesn't understand that if the contractor is putting a condition on the road that's turning snow into glare ice, and they're not putting sand over top of ice, not putting sand over top of snow, traction's not being restored. So you can't blame those accidents totally on drivers, because the condition offers a bad situation for most drivers. And we got a lot of young drivers who've never driven on snow or ice. So they're out there learning on the highway system. Now, from a common sense point of view, the better shape you can keep that road in, the least amount of accidents you're going to experience. And we've proven that over the years. So for anyone, doesn't matter where you're sitting in Victoria office or whether you're sitting in the chemical company owner's desk, to try to tell people, oh, you can just put this chemical on the road and it'll be all bare and save the cost of salt. It doesn't work that way. Chemical, on the old system, we would mix salt and sand together, put it on top, put it on road condition, spray it on the road, and the salt would, if the temperature was proper, the salt would melt down, and the sand would be on the road surface to provide extra traction. So you have to apply extra traction, and that means to replace the snow with sand. Now, if you use a chemical deicer, you better be on guard real close, because as soon as that chemical freezes and you get glare ice, and if you don't have any sand out there, you've got a skating rink. So I'm just trying to reinforce those conditions. So as far as a taxpayer sitting in the district right now, my recommendation to you would be to go to your MLA and ICBC and say, hey, we're getting into the July month. Where is the sand stockpile? Because if we're going to put sand out, we have to have it on the road for traction. We know that. That's common sense, proven with historical data. traction restorer. So we've already talked about that and we've experienced that. So in the field, you should be seeing stockpiles of sand. So to take a look at the big picture, now, you should be going to your local district manager and highways office, and also to your MLA and to ICBC, and saying, look, I'm a taxpayer out here, and I'm a defensive driver, I'm an accident-free driver, and I know about putting my tires on and how to way to drive, but I want to know what the hell you guys are doing out there. Are you stockpiling sand? So when we need sand, we have it. Sensible thing is to mix the salt and sand together, have the pile handy, and have the piles a decent spread distance so we don't have to haul it too far, 40, 50 miles, probably lots of distance, and start asking questions and question the big picture. You're paying for this stuff. You're the taxpayer. Now, if they're not putting a stockpile of sand up, if you've got sand that's already stockpiled and ready to go, you're in good shape. Then it's a matter of hiring the people the 1st of October, having the people trained, and hired, and trained to operate the equipment, double check the equipment, do check the dispensing, calibration, making sure the dispensing is working good. But first off, right now, it's the time of the year when there should be crushing going on. Sand should be being crushed, fine and coarse, and piles made up and mixed with salt. And also, if you need chemical ordered, it should be ordered now and stockpiled. Now, what happens with us, we see where the contractor sometimes gets changed, and so you have an outgoing contractor that's going to be leaving about October, and a new contractor coming in. So the contractor going out won't stockpile anything because he doesn't have the job anymore. So you get caught with no sand. And the contractor coming in hasn't been there yet, so he hasn't stockpiled. So looking at it from the road user's point of view, you get caught by switching of a contractor, or the contractor hasn't performed and is being replaced by another one, maybe a lower bid, and all of a sudden there's no sand piled, no stockpile. And as we talked about before, it doesn't matter who does the job. It's a matter of planning. Now, if you got some district manager or a regional director who's changing the contractor and playing a musical contractor, now if the contractor is not performing, that's a matter of inspection. So I'd like you to think about those kind of things, and this is the time of year now that under the old system we had a regional mixing plant arrangement and a regional crushing crew and a regional sand screening operation. They'd go around and screen the sand, stockpile it, and stockpile the piles at about a 50-mile spacing so they wouldn't have to haul the sand too far. So as a road user and a taxpayer, I'm asking you to think about that and start asking questions locally with your highways manager locally and a contractor, and also your MLA, and say, look, what in the hell are we doing to prevent accidents this coming winter? Are we going to go into the winter with no sand stockpiled? Are we going to be able to do accident prevention and go back to the good thinking where we stockpile the stuff ahead of time, mix the sand and the salt, get it all ready, have the piles ready, and hire the men at 1st of October and train them and do the organization like it was an organizational system all scheduled with the training provided and accident prevention thought about ahead of time. Don't wait till you have the accidents and everybody's upside down in the ditch. Have the road plowed and sanded ahead of time. And safe operation. Now, if you're not going to do that, you might as well give everybody a felt pen, and you go around the table and you write on your dad's head and your mother's head and your grandfather and your children a price tag. How much is a human life worth? Nobody can replace a grandmother or a grandfather. So if it's a young person, probably a pretty big price because they got a long life to live. An older person, that's 95 or 100 years old, they're near the end of their life cycle. But if you turn around and say, well, look, I know a load of sand will probably get me 20, 25 miles and get accident prevention for me and stop the accident cost and have the carnage slow down so people aren't killed or injured on the roadway. Because every time you have an accident there, ICBC just pay for it. There's no incentive to do a good job, no incentive to stockpile sand and get things ready. Those kind of things were always done before under schedule. So I'm asking you to just give it a little bit of thought, start asking some questions locally. Talk to your local contractor, talk to the highways manager and on the MLA and say, look, as a taxpayer, I expect the job to be done similar to what it was done before, because we know it works. So let's plan about preventing accidents for this winter, and let's try and bring the costs down by getting ICBC involved and saying, look, we're not going to pay for accidents. If you're not going to sand the highway and look after it, we're not going to pay the total cost of the accident. So if we find an accident that's caused by a slippery road, glare ice road, and there's no sand involved, and the police find that when they do the inspection, the price of the accident is going to be shared between ICBC and the contractor. Now we have some incentive to do the work and get the safest job we can. So have yourself a great afternoon and hope the summer goes well for you. Bye for now.